Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are tearing into one of the absolute most hotly debated and honestly frequently misunderstood topics in engine building and car modification: intake manifolds. Specifically, we're diving into the battle between conventional layouts and those highly sought-after vertical intake manifolds. I mean, walk into literally any car meet or scroll through a build thread online, and you are inevitably going to hear someone claim that bolting on a massive, vertically oriented intake is the ultimate hack for unlocking horsepower. But is it actually? Today, we're putting engineering facts right up against garage fiction to see what really makes an engine breathe. So here is the central myth we need to tackle right off the bat. Does making an intake manifold vertical actually improve engine performance? Now, the common assumption out there is a resounding yes, absolutely. People look at a vertical intake, they see this seemingly straight, aggressive path, and they just assume that visual directness instantly equals more airflow and consequently way more power. But as you're about to see, an engine doesn't have eyes. It literally does not care what the manifold looks like from the outside. It only cares about the physics happening on the inside.
Okay, let's dive into this with part 1, Anatomy of an Intake.
To understand the physics, we first need to look at the journey of air into an engine, which is a very specific multi-step process. First, air gets drawn in from the outside world right through the air filter and intake duct passing the throttle body. From there, it dumps straight into the plenum. After that, it gets divided up and sent barreling down the runners, past the intake valves, and finally into the combustion chamber. And you know, whether an engine is naturally aspirated and relying on the downward pull of the pistons, or if it's being force-fed by a big turbocharger, the intake manifold still has two really critical jobs. It has to provide a path for the air, and it has to distribute that air as evenly and efficiently as possible to every single cylinder.
Let's break down those internal components, starting with the plenum. You can think of the plenum kind of like a reservoir or a pressurized holding tank. This is absolutely crucial because it means the throttle body doesn't have to desperately try and feed every single cylinder individually at the exact millisecond it demands air. Instead, the plenum provides this nice shared volume for the individual runners to draw from. It also acts as a buffer. It smooths out the violent, highly pulsating airflow created by those cylinders repeatedly opening and closing their intake valves thousands of times a minute. It's chaotic in there, and the plenum calms it down.
And drawing from that plenum are the runners. These are the individual passages connecting that shared reservoir directly to each specific cylinder's intake port. So, for a 4-cylinder engine, you generally have 4 runners. But here is where the engineering gets really intense. These aren't just dumb hollow tubes. They're specific geometry. We're talking their length, their diameter, their taper, their cross-sectional shape, and even their surface curvature massively influences the overall behavior of the engine.
Which brings us to part 2, the hidden physics of air. Right here is where we are going to completely shatter the biggest myth in automotive modification. Bigger is not always better. You see, air isn't just empty space. Air actually has mass. And because it has mass, when it moves, it has momentum. It behaves a lot like a fluid. If you make a passage too large, well, sure, you increase the theoretical volume, but the airflow velocity just plummets at certain operating conditions. On the other hand, if the passage is too small, you get great velocity at low speeds, but it strictly restricts flow and literally chokes the engine at high RPMs. So manifold design is actually a really delicate optimization problem. It's all about balancing volume and velocity. Definitely not a brute force bigger is better situation.
So how do engineers manipulate this physics problem? Mostly using runner length. Generally speaking, long intake runners favor stronger torque at lower and mid-range engine speeds. They keep the air velocity nice and high when the engine isn't spinning very fast. On the flip side, short runners help the engine breathe effectively at higher RPMs, when it desperately needs a massive volume of air in a fraction of a second. Engineers use these specific dimensions to dictate exactly where the engine produces its most useful, efficient power. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why runner length matters so much. It is all about acoustic resonance. When an intake valve violently snaps shut, that fast-moving column of air doesn't just instantly stop. It crashes into the closed valve and bounces back, creating a literal pressure wave that travels back up the runner. If the runner length is perfectly tuned, that pressure wave will bounce off the plenum and arrive back at the valve at the exact millisecond it opens again, literally pushing extra air into the cylinder. It's exactly like pushing a swing at the perfect moment. It drastically improves volumetric efficiency. How cool is that?
All right, let's move into part 3, conventional versus vertical. So a conventional layout usually routes the runners according to the standard horizontal or angled space you find in the engine bay. It offers familiar packaging, really flexible routing. A vertical intake, on the other hand, directs the plenum and runners predominantly upward. But here is the big secret. A vertical design is frequently just a packaging solution. Modern engine bays are absolute nightmares of clutter. You've got turbocharges, bulky intercooler piping, complex wiring, emissions equipment taking up every inch. Sometimes going vertical is literally the only way engineers can fit the required runner length into the car without smashing into the suspension towers or the firewall.
So the crucial point is, what factors are actually dictating power? Well, we've got runner length, runner diameter, smooth transitions, controlling pressure loss, cylinder distribution, and plenum volume. Notice what is not on that list? Yep, the outward physical orientation of the manifold. Like we said earlier, the engine operates completely in the dark. It only knows what the air experiences inside those internal geometries.
Which brings us to a massive misconception that we really need to clarify right now. Vertical does not mean short. People see a manifold pointing straight up and they instantly assume it's a high RPM, short runner drag racing part. But a vertically oriented runner can still be incredibly long. It can travel upward, curve all the way across the top, and drop back down before ever reaching the cylinder. Vertical simply describes the physical geometry in the engine bay. Long runner describes the actual tuned airflow path. They are two entirely different concepts.
Now, because automotive engineers are greedy, and I mean that as a compliment, they want low RPM torque from long runners and they want high RPM horsepower from short runners, they actually developed a brilliant solution, the variable length intake manifold. This is an advanced system that uses internal valves or flaps controlled by the engine computer to physically change the intake path depending on engine speed. At low RPM, it routes air through a long path. Floor the throttle and hit high RPM, those flaps open up and it instantly switches to a short path. It's the absolute best of both worlds, and it proves once again that performance is all about tuning the airflow path, not just pointing it upward.
Let's wrap things up with part 4, the engineering verdict.
To summarize our findings today, if the engine needs low-end torque, the determining factor is long runners. If it needs high RPM power, the determining factor is short runners and flow capacity. But if the main issue is engine bay space, well, that is when the determining factor becomes a choice between a vertical or conventional layout. The power curves are dictated by the internal acoustic tuning and geometry. The choice of vertical or conventional is dictated largely by the physical limits of the car's chassis.
So please remember, appearance can be incredibly misleading. An original equipment manufacturer isn't just designing for peak horsepower. They have to balance fuel economy, stringent emissions, manufacturing costs, and even things like front-end crash requirements. That is exactly why factory conventional manifolds can look so unusual or bulky compared to a sleek aftermarket vertical manifold. But just because a vertical manifold looks more impressive from the outside doesn't inherently mean its internal flow dynamics are actually superior for your specific engine's needs.
I want to leave you with this exact quote from the source material because honestly, it hits the nail right on the head. The best intake manifold is not necessarily the biggest, shortest, or most vertical one. It is the one that is properly tuned for the engine. An intake manifold is a finely tuned acoustic airflow system. It's not just a set of metal pipes. So the next time you are looking at a flashy vertical intake manifold at a car show, ask yourself, is this actually optimizing the runner length and pressure waves for this engine's power band? Or is it just a really, really expensive way to reorganize the engine bay? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.